Bipolar Rollers, welcome back. Listen, I wanted to touch real quickly today on our topic, which is coping with intrusive thoughts. Now, you might not know this, but intrusive thoughts are those uninvited mental interruptions that can be particularly overwhelming, especially when living with bipolar disorder. They don't just show up quietly. They can feel, invasive, loud, and relentless. And the harder I try to ignore them, the more persistent they become. Simply telling myself it's fine, everything's fine, it doesn't help. I've come to understand that facing these thoughts head on is the best way forward. Now, one important realization I've had is that intrusive thoughts don't define who I am. They are just thoughts. They're often irrational and exaggerated, and they gain strength when I try to hide or suppress them. Now, keeping them bottled up only seems to make them grow louder. So, how do you cope with them when you have bipolar disorder? Here's what I found helpful, and I'll tell you also what doesn't work. I don't pretend they're not there. Now, ignoring intrusive thoughts doesn't make them go away. In fact, they tend to return with more intensity when I pretend they don't exist. I don't self-medicate. I don't anymore, but I used to. While it might be tempting to numb the discomfort with substances or distractions, I know this only provides temporary relief and can lead to more significant problems later on. I don't argue with them. Now, engaging in a mental argument with an intrusive thought doesn't lead anywhere productive. It only leaves me feeling mentally exhausted and more entangled in the negativity. I say them out loud. I've learned that giving my intrusive thoughts a voice helps to take away some of their power. In a private space, I acknowledge them by saying, and this gets me in a lot of trouble because I do talk to myself a lot, but I say to myself, all right, here's what my mind is telling me right now. And then I verbalize the thought. This practice helps me to see the thought for what it is. It's just a thought, not a fact. So I also reach out to someone or talk to myself, which I mentioned earlier. When possible, I share my thoughts with someone I trust. If that's not an option, I talk to myself. Often when I'm making music, I do this a lot. Speaking my thoughts out loud helps me process them in a more rational way. I observe without absorbing. That's an important one. I try to view my thoughts as an outside observer rather than internalizing them. They don't have to dictate how I feel or what I believe about myself. I do this a lot. I engage in physical activity. Physical movements help me shift my focus and release some of the tension that intrusive thoughts create. Whether it's walking, stretching, or any form of exercise, it reinforces that I'm in control. One of the things I do this is by running around the house trying to find things to do to distract me for the time being until that intrusive thought goes away, because they are pretty persistent. I also set limits on my thoughts. I give myself a specific amount of time to focus on these thoughts, after which I consciously decide to move on. This boundary setting prevents the thoughts from dominating my day. Now, I have the power to manage my intrusive thoughts. Managing intrusive thoughts isn't about eliminating them completely. I've learned that it's about creating enough distance from them so they no longer feel overpowering. Saying them out loud helps me disrupt their grip on my mind. Sharing them, even if only with myself, reminds me that I have the power to manage what goes on in my head. When I observe rather than absorb, I can acknowledge these thoughts without letting them control me. It's not always easy, but it's possible, and every time I take that step, I reaffirm my strength. As always, Bipolar Rollers, if you like this video and you want to see more, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel because it keeps us going, and thanks for joining me on this special little interview. Miss you guys. And as always, my Bipolar Rollers, represent.